One of this?
Oh, yeah, we're recording, so if other people want to watch this later, they can.
Oh, okay, I was gonna say.
Just so everybody knows that.
We don't eat paper.
We're not going live.
We're not going on. Okay, okay. Okay, did you get one?
And then, like he said,
I got name tag. Anybody know what's different? What's different? Oh, well, no, I have.
Yes, some of you.
Because people, you know, this kind of stuff.
So, we ready?
That's
very good. Oh, I actually, this is fine, that's out here, I actually brought this for the after church, you know, when we were going.
Oh, well, that's right, there'll be more left.
There'll be more.
I put it out and then I have some more in the freezer.
Okay, I just. Hi, good morning, good morning. Is that your phone?
Yes. I hope it's not from David over there.
No, it's not. Every time.
well, that's from the mom, from the spotlight.
Okay,
I'm
it's
not allowed
black,
to
it's
do
good
that.
that we have Zoom, but it is different.
Spotlight.
He's fine, he should be here in a little bit. He's coming this morning too. We just came separately so he can go home when he gets tired.
I also carry my driver's
Want to do a seat?
It's just a reminder to pick up some prescriptions on the way home.
You want to sit on your
As I go
walker or
by.
would you like to sit in a chair?
The operative person sitting here
Yeah.
looking out.
Okay.
Joe is coming, but he's having a very rough morning. I don't know what that means, but.
Who?
Joe.
Oh.
He said he'll be here, not a way to start supporting your class. It's okay.
Is that what you told him?
No,
Oh,
that's
okay.
only, oh my God, we're already in bad terms right now.
So Grace gave me these, they're from, have you guys seen the, what are they called, the Great Books?
Yeah. The who book?
Oh, Great Courses, you can order them online or whatever.
Yeah.
She brought me these and just said, these are ones that she's done that are biblical ones,
Uh-huh.
kind of what we're doing, and if anybody's interested, you know, you could take a picture or look it up, there was 4 of them that she brought. So I just, yeah. Hi, Lynn.
Good morning, how are you? Island.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, my
Move
bad.
chairs around.
Do you want
I want
do you
one
want a
chair.
chair? Yeah, I figured you'd
Yeah.
want, do you want it back
I
further
don't
or?
want back further, just because I need to push things on my.
Yeah, okay.
Laptop, okay, laptop, yeah, so I'm just gonna sit kind of.
Do you want me to talk to Caitlin?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I wanted to push your buttons, honey. Well, I could have brought clickers,
Yeah.
I mean, I could have done, I mean, official, right?
All right.
Yeah, I do not need to.
Yes.
Dressing room, shower. Small boy.
We'll make it up. Did you see the video I sent you?
Oh, I haven't looked at it
Yeah,
yet.
an hour.
Okay, anybody who wants, there are also handouts. I'll give you a couple. Yeah. There's enough,
Oh, okay.
there's enough. So are we ready to go?
So are we ready? Are we ready to go live, you guys?
We are.
Woo-hoo!
First day of
All right,
class.
first day of class. Now, we have some ground rules here. You raise your hand if you need to leave the room and use the bathroom. The bathroom's right up there.
This is adult ed, you can go to potty by yourself, you don't have to tell.
Okay.
You ready to record though?
It's being recorded.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
5 after 9. I mean,
All right, I'm gonna welcome you all to this 1,000 years of Christianity.
easy.
Easy peasy. So Judy, June, and I have been working. We're trying really hard to put this into a context that we are enjoying, and hopefully you will too. We have our resident historian, and he'll correct us anytime he wants to. And we have our other historian who can also keep us on track if we screw up. So we welcome you all and so glad you're all here. So I am going to open us in prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we're starting on a new journey with you. We are trying to learn more and more about our history of our church, and the world around them when they were starting your churches. So be with us today as we start with the birth of Christ, your Son, and let us all take time to really reflect on all this, the book, and our questions. We ask this in your name. Amen.
So we wanted to have a little bit of, I guess we call them ground rules or whatever. Obviously, we want everybody to participate as much as you want, as much as you can. We hope that you get a chance to read the chapters, before we get to them. If not, come anyway. We're handing out summaries each time, which kind of gives a summary of it and some study questions. So there's, a variety of things that way. If you can see, we made this huge timeline up here. And our hope is, and this is kind of their part, right?
Yeah, it's pretty blank right now. It looks pretty boring, doesn't it? So, magic markers, and they are magic. So, we're hoping that during these classes, something will, you want it to be remembered. So, please take a magic marker and write it up. If it's some names you want to remember, put it in. Right now, you can see you get the first 100 years. Now, don't you dare go into 200. Not today. Although you will find we're going to go into many. But please, get up. If there's a name you really want to put on, take the magic marker and write it up there. If there's something that is really significant and you want us to remember that. So please, get up anytime, and especially get up, and we'll probably put up some things if we, don't remember. So please, don't feel shy. You can use colors, and we'd like to fill this timeline by the end of 1,000 years and have all the significant things that we think, and then you can go back and, what was that happened in 200 and something? And if you have a specific date, you can write that specific date on there. So that's kind of it, right? For rules.
We have.
I'd like to add something if I could.
Sure.
I have the book, and I just got it yesterday. If anybody else does need the book, I think there's still one copy available at the downtown library, and they will deliver it to your local branch in a couple of days if you order it up online. And so I just got mine yesterday. That was after coming to the church just before they announced that all the books were gone.
It's also
Audible, Spotify, I think.
Has, if you have a premium version of it, you can also get a free copy. You can get it there to read it or to listen to it.
Does everybody have a book that wants one?
Is there some paper that we're supposed to?
Oh, yeah, it's the first summary. It's got questions and summaries and stuff like that.
Yeah. So what we've done, and we may change it depending as we go along, if we find, hey, we're spending a lot more time on this. But right now, we've divided the book into 2 chapters each week. And the three of us are we've all signed up all through October. We haven't done November yet, but for chapters that we're going to do. As I said, we can change that if we need to. If you find, just let us know. We're really happy to have everybody.
That's great.
This is great. Come on in, Carolyn. Okay, I get to start. I get to be the first one.
And if we only go a half a chapter, okay, but we'd like to try to do 2. But if we don't and we find we can't do 2, or 2 is, we're done in 20 minutes, we'll pick some more, so.
And as you noticed, or may have noticed anyway, okay, on the, just a minute, I have to get out of there and into my, from the beginning, there we go. All right. There's some questions, and this is just to get us talking. So hopefully it will help. We don't want to be just one of the three of us standing up here talking the whole time. So I'm lucky because I get the 2 easiest chapters. I get the chapters that all you guys already know that. It's the life of Jesus. And then the second one is the early missionaries, and mainly it's Paul. So again, these are things that you guys are all familiar with. So as I said, I get the first one. Okay, so let me go to my next slide. Yeah. So I wanted to go over just a little bit of what the Roman Empire looked like at about the time or during Jesus' life, and in the few hundred years before that. In the centuries before the birth of Christ, as you can see, Rome extended. It extended into Gaul, which is now France, into Spain, down into South Africa, North Africa, sorry. Yeah.
Real big Roman Empire.
And in the first century BC, it also came over to the Eastern Mediterranean, to Greece, to the Balkans, to Egypt, Asia Minor, Greater Syria, and beyond. So it really had stretched out by the time that Jesus was born. So I'm going to take just a little bit, talk for just a couple minutes about what life was like then, and obviously not huge amounts, but I'm going to start with Octavian, and he was one of the big army commanders, and he commanded during a series of wars that helped to extend the Roman Empire. He was the adopted son of Julius Caesar, sorry. And he became master Rome when he came back and was welcomed. And he actually led a constitutional revolution that reshaped the Roman political life. So we're talking just before the birth of Jesus. And in 27 BC, the Roman Senate made him Augustus. That should sound familiar, right? And that was really what we think of as the beginning of this part of the Roman Empire. So Caesar Augustus, which we know from our New Testament, ruled for 41 years until AD 14. And he did a lot of things. He put under one authority the lands from the Atlantic all the way over to the Euphrates, from North Africa up to the Danube. So he had a huge, huge empire. There were a lot of major cities: Rome, Carthage, Alexandria, Caesarea, Antioch, Ephesus. And you can kind of see them around, and we'll talk about them. But you notice they're all either on the sea or near the sea. And that made a big difference. For one thing, it made travel from different parts of the empire much easier because they had the sea to do it, as well as they made, there were roads as well. So it was easy to move goods and people, and it gave people security, because until this time, there was always somebody invading, and you never quite knew. So at least with Roman authority, there was some security. You might not like it, but there was some security and some peace. The other thing that the Romans did was there was a common language, and it was actually Greek, that they used for trade and communication and that type of thing. But they also didn't push everyone to speak that one language. So people in the different areas were able to continue using their own language. Now, one of the first questions on your list there, for chapter 1, was, so why do you think Wilkins emphasized the Roman Empire before he ever started talking about Jesus? Why did he start it this way? What do you think?
Context.
Context, yeah. Yeah. It gave us the picture, it gave us the idea, the infrastructure, what was going on, the languages. It also went over, where the major cities were, how transportation was easier. And all of these set the stage then for Christianity's emergence. Having this made a big difference.
It also helps to explain why the Roman Empire was willing to crucify Jesus. Because of the fear of rebellion among the ranks.
Right, because they didn't want.
Especially the Jewish ranks.
Yeah.
Because they were very, very, very interested in going back to their own kings.
Yes, they were. And they tried, yeah.
It also facilitated the spread of Christianity, yeah.
Yeah, it made it a lot easier to spread that. And I'll talk about that when I talk about, the second chapter with Paul. That made a huge difference. So what do you think? Go ahead, Dave.
I was struck by the reluctance of the Roman leader at the point to crucify or to kill Jesus.
Yeah.
But it was only through the advocacy of whether it's the mobs or the Jewish leaders of the time that he acquiesced to their demands.
And let it happen. Yeah, he kept wanting to let him go.
From a political point of view, from his point of view, was that minor.
Yeah, this is not a big deal. We don't need to do that. So I want you to think about if the Roman Empire hadn't been here, so imagine what would the emergence of Christianity after the death and resurrection of Christ have been like if the Roman Empire wasn't there?
It would be the common language or the ease of travel.
Okay, ease of travel, common language. Yeah. What?
Yeah. Someone said something.
Well, also it might not have spread as quickly because there was not something to rise against. Like, I think part of the reason Jesus, held such sway is it's like, there's this evil empire. There's something that we're fighting against. If it was just Jews were free to do whatever and we're not beholden to an empire and he's just like, oh, but some of these Jewish elders are corrupt, they would have been like, they probably wouldn't have paid him as much attention.
Yeah, as much heat or much attention. I agree. It also might not have spread like it did, right? It might have actually stayed a regional Jewish sect within Judea, Galilee, so forth. It would have just been much harder for it to spread. Not that it wouldn't.
Yeah, if you look at where it spread, it's exactly the places that were the Roman Empire.
Yeah, and that's where it started spreading.
And I know Judy's going to talk about it, but the way it spread, and we'll get into that, but it would not have spread like fingers and things that just spread out and attacked everything because it was there. And so when we talk about the spread of Christianity, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And I think that's why that Roman Empire was just crucial. If that hadn't been there, I think we would have been in a whole different history.
And I think because the Roman Empire was used to be, because of the areas that they had conquered, there were different religions. There were, the Greek and Roman gods, but different areas had different gods. And so in some ways, it may have been kind of a setup that, okay, here's one more, at least from the powers that be. At least at the beginning, they did not see it as being a big deal. Later on, that changed some, but.
I think that's a point very well taken, that oftentimes government and all that's taken for granted. But as you said, that the Roman Empire, with roads, language, governance, just how one got around, really made things a lot easier to maneuver versus just a wild bunch of warring sects that made it very difficult to go from A to B or communicate. So I think it's a really good point.
Actually, it's kind of interesting too, if you think about if they had just become used to having a single ruler, that supplanting it with a non-earthly ruler was one, less oppressive, and two, made sense.
Okay, so he then moves on to finally the life of Jesus. I know this is not the biggest map, but when I tried to enlarge it, unfortunately, it started out a really small picture and I just lost everything when I tried to. But I think it's interesting for us to look at where Jesus has walked, where it was in Galilee, down in Samaria, down in Jerusalem, over into Decapolis, over this way into what is now Jordan. And this is what that area looks like now. So you can see that, there's Lebanon, Syria, there's the West Bank, there's Israel, there's Jordan, of what it looked like when Jesus walked it and what it looks like now.
What are the different colors on this side representing?
These were like kingdoms.
But it says 3 different kingdoms in the green area, or is that?
Yeah, the tetra.
No, the Samaria, Judea. But that's all one.
I think it may have had, at that time, may have had a common ruler. Is that true?
So all of this would have been, part of Palestine is how it was governed, but you have the Tetrarch, you have different regions, so you have the Tetrarch of Philip, you have Galilee, and you have Judea, Galilee and Judea are both areas that are going to have a Jewish identity at that time, whereas Samaria is going to be populated by Samaritans, and we know this from the story of the Good Samaritan. That's going to be familiar to you. That's a legacy from the fall of the northern kingdom of Israel to the Assyrians, where they had a political dogma of repatriation. So they would take the elite of one place and repatriate them to another place. They would take the elite of that other place, repatriate them to that. So that's what happened to the northern kingdom. And that's where you have this kind of Cajun religion culture that is Jewish and not Jewish, or rather Hebrew and not Hebrew. And that's where you get these divisions where you worship on the wrong place in the wrong way. That lead to these really sharp enmities in Jesus' time, where you have Samaritans who are very like Jews and also different in ways that make it a really intense kind of cultural conflict. And so they're right smack in the middle between Galilee and Judea, and then Idumea is another province that I actually don't know very much about, but yeah.
So I'm going to say this now. I am not great at pronouncing the names of all these places, whether it's the cities, whether it's.
I'm working.
As well as the names of some of the people.
Yeah.
So just kind of bear with us if we kind of, it's kind of like when you're the liturgist and you've got all these names, you go, oh my gosh, how do I say this?
You have to Google them.
I Google them. Well, I do Google them.
Yeah.
All of you do fine.
But the point is just kind of realize that we are not experts on this. We're learning as we go along.
I think we all are, except for Joe.
For years and years.
Yeah. So
Joe has nothing to learn. I'm just kidding.
Okay. So you guys get to help me on this part because this is the part you all know. Now, there's not a whole lot in the Bible about the early life of Jesus. If I was asking you, so give me before he starts his ministry, What little we know, what do we know about Jesus?
He had to run away to Egypt.
Okay, and before he ran away to Egypt, he had to be born, right? So he was born, he was born in Bethlehem. Why Bethlehem? Because remember what they were saying about Caesar Augustus wanted to do was it a census, I think?
Yeah.
Right, okay, went to Egypt, came back eventually. Where did he live? Where did he grow up?
Nazareth.
Nazareth. What else do we know about his early life? We know that
He was presented, in Jewish tradition, he was presented at the temple as a baby, and then again, when he turned 12, or 15.
Yeah.
When he left his parents, go home without him.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So we know little bits and pieces. We know he lived with a very observant Jewish family. We knew that he grew up in that. We don't know huge amounts about his early life. He was almost 30 when he was baptized by John the Baptist, right? Or John, we now call him John the Baptist. And then after John the Baptist died is really when Jesus started his ministry. Okay, so now we're up to.
Can I just add a couple of things there?
Right ahead.
I'm sorry. Nazareth was just a little one-horse village, basically, and it's nowhere mentioned in the Bible, but it was just a couple of miles away from a very large, bustling Greco-Roman city, the name of which I forget. But a lot of the area must have been dominated by the city, and a lot of the people of Nazareth probably had jobs in the city nearby. For whatever effect that would have had on Jesus. Also, I think most people at this point have pretty much blown up the idea of his having been born in Bethlehem. That didn't happen. There wasn't a census or a taxation or whatever it was set up by one of those gospel stories. He probably was born and raised in Nazareth, but just that's my 2 cents worth.
That's okay, it's great. Also, when we think of, say, year 0 or whatever being the birth of Jesus, that probably wasn't true either. It's so.
And there are 2 stories. There's the story of the flight to Egypt, and then there's the story of him being presented at the temple.
Yeah.
One or the other, take your pick.
Yeah. Well, the Bible is full of many stories. We know there's more than one creation story in Genesis. I think there are many stories to at least help us look. So when we're talking about those 3 years, approximately 3 years before he made his way to Jerusalem, and in about 2 or 3 minutes, we're going to just summarize what are some of the things, what happened at the beginning of his ministry, and you can read all of the Gospels and so forth, his stories. But what do you think about Jesus? What are the things you think about during his ministry on earth?
Well, his miracles.
All of his miracles, yes. Healing people, raising people from the dead. Those are all stories within there. How about getting his disciples? Gathering his disciples?
And his enigmatic teachings. It's very hard to understand what's going on when he does his parables.
He loved his parable, or at least they wrote them as parables. They're kind of hard to think about, to kind of figure out exactly what he was saying.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I think the parables allow you to bring something forward to today, and you can almost see how the parable could apply to something today. But yes. So he talks about a new commandment. He talks about there were all the laws, but what is his main new law that he does?
Love God and love your neighbor.
Yeah, love God and love your neighbor. And that's his biggest thing. He lived a very simple life from what we can tell. It wasn't like he went from village to village and area to preach.
And I was always struck that he he lived a very different lifestyle than John did. John was aesthetic, he ate locusts,
Yes.
he stayed by himself. Jesus didn't. He was a party boy.
Yeah, that's something that struck me in the text too. I was thinking about that I hadn't really thought about before, like how, like, did people think John was like cuckoo, like Mr. Here I am in the desert, like, and then like Jesus comes to him, and then like, are people like, okay, he's associated with this weirdo who's like out in the desert eating bugs? Like, how was John perceived in that time? Because the Bible just kind of writes it like, yeah, it was great. He was baptized by John. Everyone was cool. He kept going. And I'm like, reading this text, I'm like, if I saw some guy like, you know,
Come out of the desert.
yeah, right. I mean, like, yes, let me baptize you. I'd be like, okay.
And maybe that was more common then. I mean, think
I
of
know.
eating locusts and honey and he's out.
Getting all that honey too, though.
I know, for those bees buzzing.
John the Baptist would have been a remarkable figure, but not an unprecedented figure. There were other movements in the time doing some things like John, notably the Essenes. It doesn't seem like John the Baptist. Essenes, Essene.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I saw that.
That was one of the various aesthetic is the word that Len was using there. That doesn't mean concerned with appearances. That means concerned with not doing stuff. And so there were other movements of aesthetics that were doing things like John. So he was. It's not that no one had any playbook for thinking about how he was, but he was just remarkable for how well known he was, for how widespread he was. People wonder, at least in the Gospels, the record we have of him there, if he was Elijah returned. So he was significant enough that people were comparing him to other figures from their past, like Elijah, who would have resembled this aesthetic life of powerful, critical voice.
Okay. It's not as weird as I would find him.
Yeah, I know.
Not as weird as I would find him in modern day, because I'm picturing like someone walking out of like Burning Man, like being like, I've had my shit.
And you know what I questioned too, and asked Judy, was how did his ministry, John's, spread? Was it because of the Roman Empire? That he could travel the same?
So the question earlier about Roman Empire versus not Roman Empire, yes, does that context of domination create the ecosystem that Jesus, quite apart from like the political infrastructure facilitating the spread of the idea, does the domination context facilitate John and then Jesus's ideas becoming really persuasive of the moment? And I think the answer has to be yes. Right? And some of the demons that Jesus addresses, particularly the Gerasene demoniac, the demon is Legion, which would have been a clear signal to everyone reading it or hearing that story in the time. This is about Rome, right? This is about the Roman legion, the occupation of their people.
Back to those 3 years of his life, I was struck by the author's description, and actually wrote it down, about, as you said, that the simplicity of his life and his message during those 3 years. Jesus spoke about what your life value and purpose should be, how to live among family, friends, and neighbors. And as I understood the author, that was the basics of his message and pretty much the summary of his message. And what wasn't there was a lot of complex theology, concepts of heaven and hell, and all the things that divide us and we debate about and think are important today. I was impressed and refreshed to get back to his original message, and how it often gets lost today. But that message of simplicity, I thought, was really important. And that's pretty much all he focused on in terms of Jesus's message, which I thought was important.
It's more important to take care of somebody than to obey a law that says you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath.
Yeah, I had a similar
reaction, how complicated we've made it.
Yeah.
My gosh,
divisive.
it's hard to be a Christian
Yeah.
in some respects when you read a summary like that.
Right.
And it was a nice reminder for me as well.
I agree.
I think for me, is where he lived too. He lived around the outcasts, around children, back to basics.
Right.
Who was it being cared for?
But he came from very humble beginnings, so it would have been very hard for him to insert himself into the upper class.
Okay. And then about at the end of his ministry, then he heads to Jerusalem, where he knows what's going to happen. I'm not sure, even though he tells his disciples, I don't necessarily get the feeling that they really understand that. I don't think they can grasp what's
I don't think they
happening.
understood anything. I think that's pretty clear from all of the Gospels.
Yeah,
It's always like, you guys don't get it.
Yeah.
Stop arguing about who's gonna be first and all this stuff.
Right. And what do you mean I'm going to come? Yeah, and we all know the story, we know about his triumphal into Jerusalem, the Last Supper, which is probably a Passover Seder. We've already talked about him being brought up to Pilate and to whoever the other one was. I love when we do that. Herod. And then finally, that they gave him over to be crucified, and then with his resurrection, they put him in the body. They put his body in the tomb quickly, right? Because they had to do it before sunset. They couldn't do it during the Sabbath. So it was really important, but it also meant he wasn't really prepared, as would be someone usually when they die, which is one of the reasons we get the stories about, the women coming back after the Sabbath.
The other gruesome part is he died very quickly compared to most people who Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was one of the things that the conspirators said, well, he really wasn't dead.
Oh.
Because he died so quickly.
Well, didn't they jab him with a spear in the side or something?
His hand inside.
We won't go into what they used to do.
We could watch the Passion of the Christ.
We
could. It was,
And I wrote a question for myself. Can you imagine what his disciples felt like when he died? How sad they were. And not just sad, but disappointed. Yeah.
Abandoned.
Afraid.
They were part of someone who was crucified for rebellion.
Right. Yeah. And then, we know as he appears then to his followers, gives his followers the courage and the confidence to go forth and proclaim the gospel. So, my next question. It's okay, you guys are doing good. You don't even need my question.
I know, we love them.
How did Augustus's reign, so thinking again about combining, shape the socio-political conditions that allowed Christianity to now emerge? What was there about his reign with the Roman Empire that then actually allowed Christianity to be able, for the disciples to go forth and start spreading the word more? And
so one thing is, you said there were different religions in different places, and so there was a sort of a tolerance that these things could coexist with whatever else was going on. So, to begin with, that just would have been one more thing in a mix of other things that were also coming up.
Yeah. We already talked about the political stability, and that actually made a difference, I think, because they weren't looking at being invaded again. They were already invaded, but there was a stability to this, which may have allowed, again, for Christianity to start.
And peace, there was actual
peace.
There was peace.
Yeah.
You could go wandering into somebody else's territory, and it wasn't somebody else's territory.
Yeah.
And be safe, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to skip, there's a fourth question on there, but I'm going to skip it because we've been doing so great, and I still need to get to chapter 2. To Paul, yes. And the other early missionaries. He wasn't the only one, but he was obviously the major one. And chapter 2, they name it Ephesus, Rome, and Edessa, the spread of Christianity. Now, it originated in Jerusalem, where Jesus died and was resurrected. So with his disciples, his followers, his apostles, they were all Jewish, right? Okay, so and they obeyed the same Jewish laws. Who would they spread it to usually, would you think?
Other Jews.
Other Jews, yeah. Yeah. I have another picture. This is just showing you, so there's Jerusalem, Caesarea, Damascus, there's some ones along the city, but those are the early places that the disciples or the apostles would start to spread the word, more in the Jewish areas. So it first spread in Judea and Galilee, and then onto the coast in Judah and Joppa, and then up to Damascus, and then all the way up to Antioch. And the leaders of these, the two leaders of these, of the disciples were Peter and James. Yeah, Paul was like.
Peter and James. James, the brother of Jesus.
Yes, yeah.
So
So
he puts
Peter,
brothers in quotes, he puts brothers in.
well, yeah.
There's a big debate.
Yeah. I'm not trying to solve all the debates, guys.
Please no.
But they were definitely known as the leaders. And in fact, Paul comes back once he is ready to start some of his journeys. He actually comes back to Jerusalem and talks, according to what we have, to Peter and James. So, okay, so Paul. You know the story of Paul, you know about his conversion when he was Saul, and then he was converted on the road to Damascus. But he was told, and this is the difference, and this is where he was told to spread the word, not just to Jews, but to Gentiles. Right. And it was about, according to the book, it was in AD 37 that Saul was converted on the road to Damascus. Now, as I said early on, he did go to Jerusalem, meet with Peter and James. So why do you think he met with Peter and James? Why do you think he did that before he headed off on these?
To get their approval, to get some credentials.
His credentials, yeah.
They'd actually met him.
Yeah.
They'd actually met Jesus. So.
Yeah.
There was a big deal, and if you go, I've been reading some chapters ahead, the idea of the apostles had the contact and everything followed from the apostles.
Right. Yeah. So Paul was quite the traveler. Over 30 years, he took 4 missionary journeys. I have some maps here just for you to kind of look at where, again, I'm not asking you to remember what's what, but if you look at kind of his first one, and he just kind of went over to Cyprus, and he went up into Asia Minor and around there, and comes back to Antioch. So it's still a good distance, but only in this one area. His second one starts to spread out more. So I have to follow the areas. Into Jerusalem, into Antioch, he goes over all through Asia Minor, over into what is now Greece, and back to here, and then back. So again, he's traveling from city to city, right? Going from city to city, but a much broader thing.
Why is some in green? What's that about?
You went forward one.
I think one is the way there and the other is like way back.
Or you mean
The red and the blue. Is that what you mean, or the green and the beige?
No, I was talking, the green and the beige.
I think it's just showing Greece and Turkey.
Greece and Turkey.
Asia from
In Europe,
yeah.
Europe.
Yeah, and in his third trip, again, he goes a lot by sea, sometimes from area to area, city to city. The third one, he starts in Antioch and hits some of the same cities, goes across to Ephesus. Looks like he makes a trip over and back to Greece, to Corinth, goes up this way and around. I mean, he just goes, he makes a huge amount. Now, the fourth one, I don't have a slide for that. So we're not really sure where he went on his fourth trip. We're not sure. We know that he mentions that he wanted to go to Spain, but we don't necessarily have any proof that he got there. But a lot of these places that he wrote about in his letters were not always places he had been. He was often writing to other Christian communities that had formed. So it wasn't that he necessarily visited everyone. We do know that somewhere around AD 66 or 67, he was imprisoned in Rome.
He eventually went to Rome.
Yeah, and that he died in 67 and 68. He was martyred in Rome under Nero. But he did do a lot, and he went a lot of different places. I'll talk about that in a second. But I want to say he wasn't the only missionary, right? We often think he's the early missionary. Well, he was an extremely important early missionary, but he certainly wasn't the only one. I mean, missionaries started churches in Alexandria and Rome, and he didn't go, Rome, the church in Rome was established before Paul ever was there. Odessa, over to India, and even to China. Now, think about that. Those were who? What kind of people do you think were the other missionaries? We don't have names, but.
Some of them were some of the original disciples and group there. I mean, there is a Christian community in India that traces its roots all the way back to, I think they say Thomas.
Yes.
What they say in India, that Thomas came and when the British came and tried to spread Christianity, they said, wait a minute, you're 2 millennia too late.
Yeah. So it really.
Down into Africa.
Down into Africa, Ethiopia.
Yeah, yes, and we'll talk about those later on as we get further in the book. But yeah, and a lot of it, remember we've got this nice Roman Empire that had these roads. We've got the Silk Road going eventually over all into China. And there were Jewish merchants who often were ones who spread the word as they traveled, as they brought and bought goods and so forth. So we think of Paul as kind of the big one, but he by no means was the early ones. So early on, and this is one of the things we'll go with this whole book, Christianity was not a nice, straightforward, what we kind of think of, the whole thing about who is Jesus Christ. Is it a human? Is he God? Is he God? I mean, we struggle and we go, okay, it's a Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. But there were centuries in which people argued about all of this. This was not, an easy thing as we follow this. We'll keep going through this. Early groups were made up of both Jews and Gentiles. One of the early issues is that if a Gentile accepted Christ, did they need to become Jewish? Right? And did they need to be circumcised if it was a male? Now, Paul had said that his was that the Gentiles' hearts had been cleansed by faith, and the distinction between clean and unclean no longer existed. He didn't feel that necessarily Gentiles who were converted needed to become Jewish. But early Christianity was still a very Jewish embedded area. James actually proposed a very concrete solution looking along Jewish lines, because he was Jewish. And he said, Gentile Christians must have nothing to do with pollution of idols, and they couldn't eat meat that had been offered to idols. Okay. They needed to observe Jewish practices about marriage and sexual relations. They needed to eat only meat that was slaughtered according to Jewish law. And they were not to ingest animal blood. So he just listed 4 things. You think, oh, okay, well, but think about where it was spreading to the different, all the way over to India, down to North Africa. It was so different there that even these, what seemed to be just a nice from the Jewish standpoint, a nice, simple way. It didn't hold. There was a lot of argument about that.
That got him in a lot of trouble in the next couple centuries.
Oh, yes. The agreement certainly didn't hold. Dave, you had to.
Yeah, so to your point, I was really struck by the contrast between Jesus' very simple message.
Yes.
And 25, 30 years later, we're already having arguments.
Yes.
The first great argument, should Gentiles be accepted?
Yeah.
And if so, what are the rules? And so it didn't take us long to begin messing up that
To
very.
move away from that very simple message
Right.
that Jesus preached.
We're already at it.
Right.
We're already at it.
I'd like to add, in a similar way, Jesus wasn't talking a lot or spending a lot of time on organization.
Right.
Whereas once Paul and other missionaries start going, they turn into organization men. I mean, they're building structure.
Right.
And there's a difference there.
Well, but yes, and never.
Yes, and.
Yes, and Jesus had a message for the people around him.
Mhm.
Paul was all over the place. So I can see how there need to be a little more structure to handle a greater geographic area.
And think of some of those letters that Paul wrote, and he talks about very concrete issues for the group.
Yeah.
Again, it has to do with structure and things like that.
I love polity.
Yeah, Paul was actually he introduced the whole exaltation of Christ as a divine creature. It was the beginning of the idea of Christ being God. So we're back to, so who was Jesus? We know Jesus was a human being, but Jesus was God. And that's just the beginning of this argument that went on for centuries about the nature of Jesus and the nature of.
And still.
And still perhaps today, yeah. And he even mentions the Holy Spirit. So as we're going to see as we come on, this whole issue of the Trinity and something that we just kind of accept, this was not. This was huge amounts of arguments back and forth and from the east and the west. And it just, it seems like all we did was start arguing.
Still doing it today.
Yeah, we're still doing it today, yeah.
And even more complex than.
Right.
Looking at how much Paul traveled and shared the gospel, it makes me wonder if the reason he did this was because God confronted him and said, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Was this his response? Was this him trying to make up for what he had done, to try to atone for how unjustly he had persecuted Christians? Was by going the extra mile, quite literally, to spread the message.
I think one of the things for me too, I loved having read the whole book now, but the early years, the first few centuries, Christianity spread from person to person, from city to city. There weren't churches, there weren't structures. It was really a person to person or group to group, but it wasn't large group. It wasn't until later that we get into the whole things with, the king converts, and so then all the citizens convert. But in the early days, it was a different kind of spread, and that was what Paul was working with, was going from city to city. And he did go from city to city. I want to talk just 1 minute, and then I have a couple more, and we still have 10 minutes. The fall of Jerusalem, that happened in AD 70. Now, back in the 60s, so we're only talking 30 years, the Jews the Hebrews took back over Jerusalem from the Romans. They took control of it back. And that was where their big temple was. But then in AD 70, that was when the Romans then surrounded and attacked Jerusalem and took it back over, and when they did, they destroyed the temple, right? Now that's a point I'll put up here if nobody wants to. Yeah, because I think that's something that you go, well, big deal, you destroy the temple. But it made a difference, and it made a huge difference for the Jewish people, right? The temple represented where their high priests were. It represented where they would come to the Holy of Holies. It was the place that people would come into Jerusalem for the holidays and so forth. And all this was destroyed. In fact, Jews weren't allowed to come in to Jerusalem at that point. Now, one of the things, when I think of a big thing that it changed, was, okay, the Jewish faith, or Hebrews had this, Jerusalem was their big place. But now it's destroyed, there's nothing there. So what did that mean for them? Well, there weren't any high priests, as I said, there weren't any of this. This is when the synagogues became the centers for Jewish life. So this is when that whole movement, and as we see, as Paul continued on, he used those synagogues.
I find this author really good in that he has important things, but he says it simply. And he said, for the defeat of Jerusalem forever changed the life and institutions of the Jewish people, forever. And we all would, even today, we are feeling the effects of that defeat, that change.
Yeah.
It's a really important point.
Yeah.
I hadn't understood it to be so important.
Yeah, I hadn't either. Like I said, I keep finding these little things within this book, which I really like.
I'm gonna write it up there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So grab
Take the pen. We have a lot, I know there are a few things I'm gonna put up too, so please.
You can write it
Anywhere you,
and just put a line in. Yeah. So,
write it big.
Why were cities critical to the early spread of Christianity? What do you think?
Trade.
Okay.
Where all the trade happened, people were coming and going all the time.
Yeah, so you've got this urban, I don't know how big they were necessarily, but urban centers. Also, all of them had Jewish synagogues.
Yep.
And Paul used those. That was usually the first place he went in Egypt in his journey. That was where he began his teaching. And my understanding is there not only were Jews at the synagogue, but also what they called God-fearing Gentiles.
Yep.
So they weren't necessarily Jewish, but they still were around the synagogue. And so they would hear his teaching and his preaching, and that was where it began.
Probably had great coffee shops.
That's also where there were literate populations. And that becomes important later as far as things being able to be read and to be written down and so forth. Where out in the periphery or out in the countryside, most people were illiterate.
Now, one of the other things that the Roman Empire offered was books and paper. The history of paper and the loss of cheap paper when the Roman Empire fell was also critical.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So if you think about Paul's missionary approach, the way he did it, what was distinctive about his? We've talked about a couple of them. One, he hit the cities, right?
Well, he was Jewish, so he could go to the synagogues as a Jew. And second of all, he was a Roman citizen. He was actually not born in Jerusalem. He was from Tarsus. So he was a Roman citizen. So he had both the identity of being Jewish and also the privileges of Roman citizenship, which meant he could travel fairly freely.
And he did. And you look at where he traveled. And certainly the Roman Empire and the way it was set up with its roads and its sea things, it allowed for that. Also, it allowed for the transport of letters. They had a mail service. It wasn't quite like USPS, but it was a way, and that's one of the ways that Paul communicated, right? Was his letters to different groups.
Probably more reliable than our service.
I think the other thing unique, I guess, is we've always said that, is that he was targeting Gentiles. And certainly he got some Jews at the time, but he felt his thing was to spread the word to Gentiles.
Isn't that what Jesus said to him
That's what he told him. Yeah, that's what he told him on
on the road? Yes.
the road. Yeah. Comments, things you want, these are the first 2 chapters, I don't have anything else.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
The maps are wonderful.
Did you like the
Yeah, the
map?
Yeah, the maps, yeah.
Perfect, yeah. So take your ideas and get them up there, and then we can remember, oh yeah, remember that happened here.
Yeah.
And if we don't, we'll
And
get a
the
bunch.
thing is not to get actual dates or whatever, but it's more to see what happened in consequence, you know, this happened before that.
Yeah, before
kind of
now.
thing.
We're gonna find a lot of this crossover. Wait a minute, this is 300, but we gotta go back to 100 to figure out where and how this happened. So it's a lot of fun, but complicated.
Yeah, so we hope you'll enjoy this series. I think I've learned a lot reading this book. I really didn't know much about the first 1,000 years. I'm also amazed at how little we agree with each other. And how, as you said, it had to do with the structure, it had to do, but the arguments that would go back and forth and so we'll get more into that as we go along.
Yeah, next week will be about that, yeah.
Yeah, June, you have next week,
Judy has
right?
next week, yes.
Yeah, I do next week.
And then Judy is back,
I'm back in town.
and then I'm not until the 4th one. Whatever,
Yeah,
the way it fell with vacations.
it's okay. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
all. Thank
Yeah,
you.
awesome.